right now we're a wine bar restaurant. We started our life off as a wine bar, but we've evolved into a restaurant. Again, when a chef like Chef Paul lands in your lap, you take advantage of that. And so we are a full-service restaurant. We like to say it's refined food in a casual atmosphere where we take the food and wine seriously, but not ourselves too seriously. Of course, we take our guests seriously as well.
Yeah.
And it's become a very comfortable place for people to come. They feel like it's their own. Over and over, we hear people saying, I want to bring friends here because they would love it. So-and-so would love this. And you guys are just killing it.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, owner at Vino E Vivo, Tony Callendrello. My man, Tony, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I absolutely am, Eric.
It's psyched to have you here.
Early in the morning, but that's okay.
Hey, we're going to do it. And I'm psyched because I've had Paul Callahan on the show. He first was on the show like in 2015, and then I was following his work. I actually staged with him at one point. I volunteered on his property when he was trying to first get that thing going, like helping him strip the land. And I have a lot of respect for what he's doing. He was back on the show 2 weeks ago, and he said, you got to talk to my partner, Tony. And you're here. You have a really inspiring story, man. You didn't even know you were going to open a restaurant until 2014, and you're on the verge of retiring from your previous career. So I think at any point in your life, you can make it happen. And I think that's inspiring.
Yeah, it is definitely a second act for me, that's for sure. And one of the things I've learned is this business is not easy, but and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and I can't wait to find out what you've learned along the way. You opened in 2019, correct?
2018.
2018.
July of 2018.
Paint the big picture. Actually, before you do that, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
I tell people options are so important in this business because you can't predict what's going to happen. You can't predict what the economy is going to do. You can't predict COVID. You can't predict staffing issues, but give yourself options. And those options, especially if they don't cost you anything, can be extremely valuable. And that's what I've found with Vino E Vivo is having options have opened up opportunities and enabled us to take advantage of opportunities that we otherwise would have missed.
Can you give me examples of like options? Like, what do you mean by options? Give me an example of an
So for example, the space we're in right now where Vino E Vivo is located is a condo. The entire building is condos. I had the opportunity to buy the condo unit above me, and it provided an option, I thought, to either do retail up there if we wanted to do retail wine, to do another restaurant, to do a luncheon place. The fact that the basement of that unit was on the other side of our kitchen wall provided an extremely valuable option that we didn't have to pay for because this space had a tenant, it was paying rent, didn't cost me anything. But when Chef Paul joined, which I know you spoke with him, we needed to expand the kitchen. And we were able to expand the kitchen because I had that option available to me because I owned that space. We were able to double the size of the kitchen and give Paul the tools he needed to put out the menu he wanted to put out.
Yeah, and I think it's what I've noticed is people get in trouble when they're opening their first restaurant or their third restaurant, whatever restaurant. They have this vision. They get so dead set on what they want it to be, or the systems and operations that they build around that restaurant, and they think they know exactly how it's going to go. But the truth of the matter is once you open those doors, whatever you had in your mind is probably not likely going to be 100% the way it is. So if you have backup plans and options, and if you're willing to be nimble and adapt to whatever the situation asks for or calls for, like it can be super powerful.
Absolutely. And another example is in late 2019, we got a retail license, mainly because I wanted to start a wine club, and we may talk about the wine club later.
Yeah, we will, for sure.
But having that retail license when COVID hit was extremely valuable. Having that option to sell retail, where restaurants could sell 2 bottles to go, we could sell 2 cases to somebody.
And that was sorry, keep going if you have more to say.
No, and our guests wanted to support us, so they did buy quite a bit at retail.
Yeah, and what you're bringing to my mind now when you say options, it's almost like another way to think about it is other channels of revenue. And so you see that with like your traditional restaurant model, where you have people coming in and you're earning a percent profit on every dish sold, but also having the annual revenue from the wine club and having the all those like recurring subscription models, and then you have your retail. Like if you can increase the channels of revenue, if they can all align, if it's all like symmetrical, or like there's if there's symmetry there, it can be super powerful.
Yeah. And options, you use options in two ways. One is you use them to protect you from downside risk.
Right.
That's one of the classic ways of options. The other thing is to take advantage of situations that give you the ability to, like you said, create a new revenue stream, to take advantage of a new market, whatever, a changing trend in restaurants. Those options are upside options. You got downside options, upside options, and it's great if the same option you've invested in gives you protection for both.
Awesome. Great way to get this thing started. So before we go back to where it makes sense to start sharing your story, paint the picture of what your portfolio is today. You got Vino E Vivo. I know you're working on a project upstairs. Like what is your business today?
Right now we're a wine bar restaurant. We started our life off as a wine bar, but we've evolved into a restaurant. Again, when a chef like Chef Paul lands in your lap, you take advantage of that. And so we are a full-service restaurant. We like to say it's refined food in a casual atmosphere where we take the food and wine seriously, but not ourselves too seriously. Of course, we take our guests seriously as well.
Yeah.
And it's become a very comfortable place for people to come. They feel like it's their own. Over and over we hear people saying, I want to bring friends here because they would love it. So-and-so would love this. And you guys are just killing it. And so it's really a full-service restaurant. During COVID, we had the option to do some outdoor dining. The town of Exeter was very gracious in letting us use some space out there. So we built a 34-seat patio outside. And that continues to be a very popular place and gives us yet another option.
Beautiful views. I actually took a shot of the view this morning on my phone. There's fog on the river right now. I don't know if you saw that when you came in this morning.
I did.
It's a beautiful, like, historic landscape.
It is, and it's one of the underappreciated parts of Exeter. The river is gorgeous. Most towns would kill to have a view and a setting like that, and so we were able to take advantage of it with the patio and provide outdoor dining for people.
And you've started the project on your second restaurant, which is going to be right upstairs. I love that it's close. What's the vision on that?
That's going to be a cocktail bar with a small plate menu.
Okay.
It'll be called the Exeter Apothecary because the space in 1873 when this building was built was a drugstore.
Okay.
And many of the built-ins are still in there. The cabinetry from 1873. It's absolutely gorgeous. So we're going to play up against that, provides a beautiful environment. I think when it's done, it'll be a place like you would see in Manhattan or Boston or some major metropolitan
area. And it's
area.
still going to be a drugstore. Technically, alcohol is a drug.
Exactly.
It's funny how we don't group it as a drug, but it is.
We will have mocktails too.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now that we kind of understand where you are today and what you got going on, where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Take us to the beginning.
So back in 2016, I was planning to retire. My wife and I had talked about it. I talked with my partner and said, I will be retiring at the end of 2018. And what I did was I was chief operating officer for a company that developed, owned, and operated energy projects around the country. And my partner was great. We worked together for 16 years at that point. I told him that I was going to be phasing out, and we made some organizational changes to enable me to do that. I took a couple of months off, rode my bicycle from...
Is that your bike right outside?
Well, that's my bike from home, yes.
Your commuter bike.
My commuter bike. But I rode 2016 in the summer. I rode from San Francisco to Portsmouth.
Oh, wow. That's a dream of mine. I thought about trading in my camper, getting a little trailer, and just riding my bike around the country to keep my operational expenses.
It is a great way to see the country. It really is. And so I did that, and when I got back, my wife asked me that question that is a difficult one, and I won't say I'd been avoiding, but I hadn't thought much about is, so what's your plan when you retire? And I didn't
How old were you when you retired?
Let's see, I was 67.
You rode your bike across the country...
64.
At 64.
Yes.
Holy shit. I ride my bike 40 miles and I feel like I accomplished something.
Well, I was in much better shape then.
Well, I mean, still, man, like that's an accomplishment right there. I mean, I kind of want to go more into that. Like what Was that something you always wanted? Wait, did you do that before you retired, or
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
how early before you? 2016.
2016, summer of 2016.
Okay, what was that like, man?
It was great. It was actually an organized tour from a company in Plastown, New Hampshire.
Oh, really?
I'll give them props because they do a terrific job of organizing these tours. It's called America by Bicycle.
What kind of bike were you riding?
I was riding my road bike,
Okay.
a really nice Pinarello.
Oh, nice.
That just
Has to be
fits me like
Italian, right?
fits. Of course, of course, fits me like a glove. And so I rode that. And what was fascinating about that was a group of 20 people, 10 Europeans, 10 Americans. And just it's an incredible way to see the country.
Oh, for sure. It's a gorgeous country.
Because you
Man.
ride every inch of it, and you're through places that are absolutely stunningly beautiful, some that are less beautiful.
Was there
but-
one spot that stood out to you?
Being in Colorado was
Yeah.
spectacular.
What route did you guys take?
We started in San Francisco and went north.
What
up in-
through Colorado? What highway did you take through Colorado?
Did
Did you come out through Denver, like that pass that goes through Denver?
No, we went through Monarch Pass.
Oh, okay.
So it comes out south of Colorado Springs.
Got
So,
it. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just a new avid bike rider. So hearing that,
That-
that's a dream of mine. I'd love to ride my bike across the country.
No, I love to talk about it.
How many miles did you ride a day?
We averaged 85 a day.
85 a day. Wow, that's
Yeah,
and
that's
every
some-
day. Did you take days off?
We had 5 days, 5 rest days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did it in how many months?
52 days total
52 days.
with
So
with the rest days.
that's wild, man.
And
Congratulations.
it's a long route too. It's a 3,800 mile route.
Wow, that's so cool. If anybody's listening to this and they're out there and when I'm on the country or on the road in the country with my camper, my bike, and you want to go for a bike ride, hit me up. I'm always looking for a ride. So you did that. You kind of this was like a bucket list item for you.
Yeah, it was a bucket list item. And actually, my son was supposed to get married. He was living in San Francisco at the time. He was supposed to get married at Memorial Day of 2016. So I had arranged this tour to start a couple of days after that. He decided to move to Germany, and he and his wife quickly got married so he could go over on her visa. So they got married in January of 2015. So I said, well, I still want to do this. So I just did it outside
Not getting any younger, right?
No, exactly.
That's so cool. So you check this bucket list item off, and at this point, I mean, you told me in previous conversations that it was around 2014 that you had this idea that you want to open a restaurant.
Right. I love the idea of the European wine bar. I love it as a gathering place. I love it as a source of community pride. I love it as a place where people just come in and can relax.
Yeah.
And it's informed somewhat by this book called The Great Good Place, which I know other people have talked about, and it talks about the third place, and that being you've got work, you've got home, you need that third place where you can go and mingle with other people, mingle with your neighbors, your relatives, your friends, and it's a great concept because we're lacking so much of that now.
Well, I was going to follow up and ask that question. Did you travel a lot as when you're the COO of this organization?
I did, but my wife and I traveled to Europe a fair amount, and we love the cafe culture, wine bar culture.
Get into that culture and what it was like for you and to experience a different culture through an American lens. Like, well, how was it different?
It's different in that you would have people every day would go to the same wine bar, and we know that because, for example, in Rome, we went to a wine bar called Al Vino. We went in there every night just for the camaraderie and meeting the people that lived in the neighborhood and talking about what's it like to live in Rome. And
What would they say?
They would say that they love the neighborhood. They always stop in here, that they know the owner, and he always has a bottle of wine for them to take home, and they stop and have a cheese plate or a meat plate, and they would meet their friends and neighbors there and spend an hour and then go home and cook dinner.
Right.
And so there was that kind of feel. Portugal was the same thing. You go to Lisbon, and there were these beautiful cafes that you sit there, and it's a group of people that clearly know each other,
Yeah.
and they either unwind or get ready to go home and make their dinner, but have that social element. And that's, these days we're missing some of that. We're missing that social element.
100%. Yeah. I'm really happy you're talking about this. Did I cut you short?
No, it's okay.
I'm really happy you're talking about this because one of the things, my mission with this podcast is to change the world through inspiring and empowering the restaurant industry. And I feel like, to your point, like the restaurant industry in America has really kind of evolved away from what it means, like where this industry was born out of. You think of the origin word of pub as a public house, right?
Right.
And you think of even the word, like the French word restaurant, comes from restore, to restore. And it's not just your energy. I think it's the soul. It's a place to rest and to be with other people and to not just absorb like energy, like sustenance, but to absorb like human energy and to like share stories and to learn. And I think we're in, especially in the community setting with like these wine bars you're talking about, like that's so important. Why do you think we don't have that here? What happened? How do we get away from that?
Well, I think you do have it in the cities to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Where you'll have the corner bar or a barber shop or coffee shop. You do have pockets of that. And I even see it in Exeter, which is a fairly small town. You've got the local coffee shop, even the McDonald's where the guys all get together every morning and sit and solve the problems of the world. But you just don't have enough of that. And you talk about the restaurant business, and it's difficult. You're trying to make money. But I think a lot of restaurants, it's become what you say, transactional. So I give you food, you give me money. We try to be more relationship-driven or relational, meaning you come in here, we know your name, we know what you like to drink, we know who your friends are. If you haven't been in for a while, we email you, find out what's going on, is everything okay? We want to have that relationship with our guests, and we want them to have relationships with others. I can't tell you how many times we've had people come to a wine club event and form friendships with other people and go out with them for dinner or other kind of social events or sporting activities. And to me, that's so gratifying because that's what we're trying to do, is build those relationships between ourselves and our guests and among our guests.
But if you could pinpoint it with, where we went wrong in America, like what is it about our culture that makes us not have that loyalty to like one watering hole? Like why do we move around and why is it so transactional?
Garage door openers and air conditioning.
Garage door openers and air conditioning. What do you...
You never have to leave your house.
Okay.
And you never have to get out of your car until it's in the garage. You don't have to meet your neighbor. It's hard. And it's also, there's so many other things that drawing your time away. If you've got children, they've got sports, they've got other activities. It's just hard. It's hard to make the time, and it takes making time. That's why the people you see usually are retirees because they've got time on their hands.
Yeah. And, I don't want to beat up too much on corporate America because I feel like I've had people from that world on the show. And I think it's important for me as the host of this podcast to get a myriad of perspectives, right? From pop-up to single unit operator, 24 seats, to multi-unit operator corporation, over 100 locations, right? Because we can learn a lot from those people and how to like from systems and process and procedure. We can take those lessons, we can put them to work at a scaled down place, like a multi-unit operator, up to like maybe 10 locations, but we can run tighter ships and make better profit to take better care of our people, right? There's something to be said, we can learn from those people. But at the same time, if you look at corporate America and what it did to, making the relationship more transactional, I think that's really where a lot of the restaurant culture kind of shifted over time, was from the expectations that the corporate restaurants put on consumers.
Right.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
I do.
Finish my thought then.
So maybe we don't do things traditionally. I mean, obviously I look at the numbers all the time and make sure we're making money so that we can pay people and we don't have to take out any debt. I think that restaurants and other gathering places haven't gone to that model where we want to remove barriers from people coming to our place. And again, I think the biggest reason why people don't go to a coffee shop and hang out for an hour, or come out to a wine bar, or come out to a juice bar or whatever and hang out for an hour after work, is they've got other obligations. Their kids they need to deal with their kids. They need to, God knows what, work, homework, whatever it is. But you go to a place like Berlin, where my son lives, you go to a beer garden What do they have there? They have a giant playground. So bring your kids. Let your kids play, have fun. You can meet with your friends, enjoy your friends.
You've seen a lot of breweries do that now. In my travels, I've seen breweries, they have like the space for kids, and then like young couples get together and they'll watch a football game on a projection screen or something like that.
Yeah, and I do think that's one of the big areas for opportunity for that. And I think you're exactly right. I see that myself. It's some of the breweries that are here.
What up, Unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master on restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
And I've noticed too, and I wonder what your thoughts on this. I think over the past 30, 40 years, we went from isolated small markets across the nation, communities like you see in Europe, right, where you have like these tight-knit communities, and word of mouth was it. Like, where do I go to get a good baguette? Where do I go to get a good cup of coffee? Where do I go to get some gelato? Where do I go? And then people would just talk, and like you would have these like little markets where word of mouth rang true, and whoever was number one in that market would do 100% more profit or business than number two. And I think that works in small communities where you have everything you need. But what we've seen is we went from small markets, isolated markets, thousands of markets all over the country, if not hundreds of thousands of markets, to a national market where now number one is McDonald's,
right?
And I think human nature. So Seth Godin talks about this in Purple Cow. Human nature is to go with number one, whatever it is you want. Like, we are hardwired as humans to go with the number one option. And when you have a national market, there becomes less room for number ones.
Right.
There's fewer number ones. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what that does is it gives you predictability. So when you go into a McDonald's, you're going to get the same hamburger that in Duluth as you're going to get in Jacksonville, Florida.
Right.
I like to have people be surprised. I love when people come here for the first time and they say, "Oh my God, how long have you been open? How did we not know about this place?" And that to me is so gratifying. And then they say, "We need to bring so-and-so here," and they'll love it. Whether it's my mother, my father, my friends, to me, that is the eye-opening thing for them. And in fact, the atmosphere is so important, and the welcomingness and the being welcome. And we've had people in tears, believe it or not, who've sat here and said, "Tony, I want to thank you so much for doing this. This is what our community needed. This is such a special place. We don't tell too many people about it." I said, "Well,
right.
I need to, but
I like being sold out weeks in advance."
Exactly. But it's super gratifying, and that's really what we were trying to accomplish. And we'll talk more about Chef Paul and how he and I got together, but we see eye to eye on this, and we always err on the fact of making people feel more welcome over making more profit, because you know what? Making people welcome brings the profit
over time.
It's
about the recurring with the Pareto's principle. I was talking about this not too long ago with somebody, but like in the restaurant industry, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your guests, the regulars, the people that keep coming back.
Right.
So I mean, I think it's important we bring light to these things, because I think we live in a world today that isn't necessarily optimized for human behavior. And I think we need to bring like human behavior to the forefront to help people understand that, like, you might be traveling and you might want to watch a football game, and you'll open your phone to see like, where can I watch the game here? Oh, there's a Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm going to go there because I know there's a TV that's going to be playing my my team on
Right.
that TV. But do the little extra effort to see what else is out there, to talk to somebody about a local sports bar. Like we have to be mindful of the path of least resistance, because it doesn't support the optimal community that we need. Right. I mean, I think that's the lesson I want to get out there.
Yeah. I mean, how special is it when you travel someplace? Now, I traveled extensively, and it sounds like you have. How special
At least in
is
America.
How special is it when you find that local place, local bar, local restaurant, and you have a great time there, and you say, oh my God, thank God I found this place.
Yeah.
And we get people who come in here for business, and they can't believe that there's a place like this in Exeter. And they say, they come back every month. They'd come to Exeter once a month, or the area once a month. They come in.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying this conversation, but I want to get back to your story. So
Okay,
do we
sure.
want to talk about what you learned? I mean, I like to pull lessons from life's past, right? Like you said, like this is your second go at it, right? But you were an engineer,
Right.
for an energy company, a COO of an energy company.
Right.
How did that how did that career, reflecting back and knowing what it's like to be a restaurant owner today, like what were the biggest lessons you pulled from that career?
Well, aside from the options, I think understanding how to develop a project and and understanding finance. We did some very large projects that had some complicated financing, and not that this is a large project and hundreds of millions of dollars or something, but
It's complex.
it's complex, and it's understanding where you can get into trouble. Debt can make you get into trouble. High rents.
Go deeper into debt, high rent.
High rent. These financial stressors are something that you can't necessarily control. You think you may have your debt locked down, but if you've got adjustable rate, and all of a sudden we have inflation pop up, and all of a sudden now you hadn't counted on that extra $1,000 a month in debt payment.
Right.
So I hate debt.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this. I'm not great with, like, financial stuff is not my strong suit. Like, I have more debt than I'm willing to admit. But I think when you come into the world, when you go to school and then you start your adult life with debt, it just kind of like compiles thereafter.
Right. Yeah, and I'm fortunate because I was able to do this in retirement. I didn't put any debt on this space when I purchased the space. Or
2018.
2018.
So you own this building or this space?
I own this space.
Okay.
I also didn't have to take out any debt to do the fit up here, which was not inexpensive. This was a clothing consignment shop when I bought it, and had none of the infrastructure you need for a restaurant. Again, I put that in the category of you don't know what you don't know. I had a hand sink and a toilet when I bought the place, and 60 amp electrical service.
That was one thing I was curious about. I mean, I being an engineer, being the COO of what sounds like a very successful company, and I warned you before this conversation that I like to talk about money. Like, how much money did you think you would need to get this space open? What kind of budget were you working with? How much were you willing to spend?
I know it's going to sound cavalier, but kind of whatever it took to make it right. I had a vision for what this place would look like. I had materials. I had a feel that I wanted, and this place, we're sitting in a place that's actually somewhat below grade. It's not quite a basement because we have windows that look outside.
But you get that cellar feeling, especially with the backdrop right behind you that you can see on camera.
Yeah, and I wanted that feel of I'm in kind of a interesting place. It's a little bit mysterious because you go down these steps and you don't know what you're going to find down the steps, and all of a sudden you see this place that's warm and filled with people and people having a good time. I like that feel, and for me it was worth buying the space because of that. And even though it didn't have the infrastructure needed to be a restaurant. Now you asked, I'm not dodging the question, but it probably, I think it was about $250,000 in fit up, maybe a little more.
And how much was the space itself, if you don't mind me asking?
$190.
$190,000?
Yep.
That's it? I
Yep.
feel like it would be a lot more than that. Well, what it was then? How much? You almost doubled the value.
Oh, I did.
Or over doubled.
Over
the
double.
value.
I put yeah.
So I mean, like, to your point, there was a sink down here. It was literally a closet. That's what it was. It was a consignment store.
Yeah.
So it was a bunch of clothes, wall to wall, and a sink and a little counter.
Yeah.
That's literally
and
all
a toilet.
And maybe
we did have a toilet.
There was there was a couple changing rooms too. I actually bought a suit or two down here back in the day. So So the space was affordable. You had this whole life before this that grants you the privilege to be able to put the money down to fulfill your vision.
Correct. And I also had the skill set for development. What we did in my company was development, energy project development. I understood what it took to build a relationship with the regulatory authorities, whether it's the liquor commission or the town building inspector.
Right.
Those relationships it's extremely...
So you had these pre-existing relationships?
No, and well, certainly not with the liquor commission,
Okay.
but I knew how to establish them, and it's...
How do you go about establishing them? Is it like there's tact to that, or is it just following the rules?
It's
being proactive.
It's being upfront with people.
Okay.
It's being honest. It's explaining to people what you need and what you're trying to do. Generally, people want to help. They want to help you succeed, especially in a small town like Exeter. The building inspector wants you to, I mean, obviously he's going to make sure you comply with the code,
Right.
but they want to see people get development done. There's an economic development director in town who's very helpful. He helps knock down barriers or open doors that build those relationships
Right.
as well, and points you to economic opportunities. For example, in this place, we were able to take advantage of a state statute called 79E, which provides a tax freeze, a real estate tax freeze, if you invest more than 50% of the cost of a historic property. So we qualified for that. So our taxes have basically been fixed for 7 years here. So even though we put in a great amount of improvements, we were still taxed at the original basis.
So it's this experience you have of like setting up these things, and I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble in this industry, and it's just lack of experience. If it's their first restaurant, they never were an engineer or working on these types of complex issues, and I don't know the first thing about the world you're in with energy and engineering, but knowing that there's a process you have to go through and having the foresight to get the ball rolling on those processes and to be proactive. I hate to put this one farm I know of on the spot right now. Great people. I don't know if you've heard of Vernon Family Farm.
Yeah.
And what they're going through right now with their town. And I hear them and their sentiment and what they're trying to do. They're getting a lot of pushback from the town and their neighbors right now. And I think the Vernons are very great. They're friends, and they're very public about this, which is why I feel comfortable talking about it. But from being in their corner and going to the community meetings and hearing their side versus the town side and the community side, I think Jeremiah just didn't know what he had to do to get the permitting to have a legitimate operation where there's the zoning's right. Like he built, I think $500,000 more, maybe more, like thing, like a kind of like a pavilion. I don't know what we would want to call it, like for his kitchen, and it was too close to the road. So now they spent all this money on this thing, and they're not allowed to use it.
Right.
So like these little things, like go through the motions. Don't do things and ask for forgiveness later. Like really be proactive and find out what could I, if I do this, am I going to be able to do it? Like, and if they say yes, get that in writing. So that if you go ahead and they do it, and later on they're like, no, you can't do this. Well, the town said I could. Here's the signature. Like, I don't even know if that would save you.
Right, and it's talking to smart people too,
Right.
who have done it. I didn't know anything about the liquor commission. I talked to somebody who had a license, and they kind of gave me a little bit of the heads up on what it's going to take to do it. The same thing with food safety and others, making sure we complied. And don't be afraid to ask. Now, I know every city and town's different. Some cities are more difficult to get permits with, but if you ask somebody, what do I need to do, you're going to get an answer. Now, it may not necessarily be the answer you like, but you're going to get an answer, and you need to know where you're starting from.
Right.
And if you can comply with it, that's great. It's going to make your life easy. If you can't, you need to have the justification. You need to provide the justification for why somebody should give you some leeway on a certain requirement.
Right. So the things you did right, you were very proactive with working with the town, figuring out the permitting, and knowing, being aware that there was going to be hoops you would have to jump through, and getting the ball rolling on that. You had the backing, your own backing from years of being successful in a previous career. So you had the money to spend. So you didn't put yourself in debt, which is another huge thing. And if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I don't know how much money you have, Tony, but I'm assuming that you did well in life. I don't have this money put away from my career. Then start where you can.
Right.
Do a pop-up. Get $10,000, do a pop-up, and then build slowly.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do see people, we've had some in town here where people have put significant investments into spaces to do restaurant, brewery, and it just hasn't panned out.
Right.
They didn't get the market right. They weren't flexible enough to change, and they took out a boatload of debt and wound up not making it and losing everything that they had invested.
Right. Any other lessons from your past life that apply and have served you today?
Well, it's getting the right people to help you. I was very fortunate. I didn't know anything about restaurant design, and so I was struggling a little bit. I went up to Independent Restaurant Supply in Portsmouth and talked to the folks there and said, I want to do this restaurant. Who can help me? Are there any designers that you work with that are any good? And they said, oh, yeah, we got a guy, Al McDonald. And it turns out Al is this fantastic designer. He's I think older than me, but he did all of Barbara Lynch's restaurants. He's always busy. People are always looking for him.
Was he the one that came by earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's about 5'2", always wears a baseball cap and shorts no matter what time of year it is.
He looks familiar, like I've seen him around before.
Yeah. Well, he just did, for example, the new Kowloon restaurant at the Brook.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
what's up? So you went to the Restaurant Supply in Portsmouth. You said, this is where I'm at. I need help. And then they said we should reach out to this person.
Yeah, because they have a partnership with him.
Okay.
So the deal is they'll make him available if you give them a right to provide the equipment. You don't have to buy the equipment from them, but they would like you to buy the equipment from them. They see it as a feed to their business.
Got it.
Which is smart.
How did he make your life easier?
Well, he came in, first of all, even before I bought the space, I said, Al, can you come take a look at this? Because I don't even know if this is appropriate space for a restaurant. And he came down, and in his usual style, he looked around and said, yeah, this will work. That's it.
Well, I mean, that's what, years and years and years of just experience. Like, you have this low riding, like, you're just seeing things that, like, did he tell you why it would work?
Yeah, he said it's good space. It's got a good feel to it. Of course, he asked me the question, where are the utilities? I said, there are none now. He goes, okay, well, we're going to have to work around that. And he said, so just be prepared to spend a bunch on plumbing and electrical. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So
with this space, where do you think his value was the most?
Well,
beautiful space.
The other piece of it was I did have a chef that signed on early on who had experience.
So you knew you needed to design. Somebody who had experience building out restaurants because you didn't know what you didn't know. You also know that you're not a chef.
Right. And I needed a chef. And he signed on early back in December of 2017, before I even closed on the place. No, I guess before I even started construction. I had closed on it. And he signed on, and he was able to work with Al McDonald to put together kitchen design, because every chef has their own quirks and desires for equipment and the layout. So the two of them worked together. Al laid out the bar for me and the bar equipment, which was fairly simple because we weren't doing a cocktail program. And we had enough to get started. I had an architectural firm, a construction firm, do the construction drawings, and then hired a contractor to execute on them. And we got it done.
What was the architectural firm you used?
I was afraid you're going to ask me. I can't think of the name.
It's not Justin Alpert by any
chance,
is it?
No.
He's somebody who's been on the show. He does a lot of work around.
No, this is a construction company that does a lot of mall space.
Okay, got it.
I just can't. I'm just drawing a blank on it.
For those who are who may be in your position, maybe they're listening to this, they have money put away from a previous career. It's always been their dream to open a restaurant. How much money should you put aside to have a design? Somebody it was Al McDonald. I wrote his name. I think I got that right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
ballpark. Depends on the
I don't even want to say, because he's so inexpensive that it's almost embarrassing.
Just throw like a random what should you have, what should you prepare, just from your experience?
Just for design and permitting?
Yeah.
I would say probably $10,000.
Okay.
It depends how far you want to go. To get like, for example, the cocktail bar space. We need to get as-built drawings, meaning there's no architectural drawings for the space as it was built, because in the 1870s they didn't do that. They built it,
Right.
and then it was modified in the 1980s.
At least they built things stronger back then.
Yeah, they did, but they also they didn't do things like subflooring and other. So I'm spending some money to have some architectural drawings done, because we need to have a lighting diagram, electrical, because the trades, they need to know where things go.
Well, yeah, that and plus the back to like the permitting, and you have to make sure that it's legal.
Right.
So
it's I'm thinking that's about what it's going to cost. We've
another
done,
10,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
but just to get the drawings and the equipment schedule for mechanical, so that and electrical, so that the trades know where things go and how much wiring we need.
Right. And you think that $10,000 sounds like a lot of money. So that's $10,000 for an architect, $10,000 for a designer separate.
Yep.
So like $20,000.
No, 10,000 total.
Oh, total. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be.
For a lot of people, that's a lot of money.
It is.
Right. But do you know how much money you're going to spend if you spend money on materials and labor to do something, and then you find out a couple months before you're ready to open that you have to do it again?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
A lot more than $10,000.
Or that you've run this wiring and that's not where the equipment actually is going, and we got to run new wiring. It can be a nightmare.
Yeah,
or your electrical panel's not big enough. Now you got to go. You're delaying opening for a month while you wait for a trade to come show up and do something.
Right. How did we start this? You said that you knew you couldn't do it alone, or you knew you needed help. Or
I knew I needed help.
You knew you needed help. So you knew you needed a chef. You knew you needed design, architect.
Right.
What else?
Well, those were the key items.
Yep.
They really were. And that gave me enough. Well, the other thing is, my wife said, "You don't know anything about operating a restaurant. Go take a course someplace." So I actually took a hospitality course at Great Bay Community College.
Nice. With Dawn? Was she still? She may not have been there at this point.
She's the one from the Holiday Inn down in
Dawn
Somerville?
Comito was the head of the hospitality program. I am also a previous student at Great Bay Community College for hospitality. I think maybe who was your teacher? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
But she was the manager at the Holiday Inn down in Somerville.
Cool.
So I took that, and at least gave me some sense of understanding. What's a banquet form? What's how much glassware do you need? How much silverware do you need? How much linens? I didn't even you don't think about this as a restaurant patron. You don't think about all the things that you have to arrange: trash, linen service, cleaning services.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding and adding. There's a lot of spreadsheets that are floating around out there, like a checklist of all the things you might need.
Right.
I should probably get one started myself. Do you have one?
I don't.
Okay. You're making me think. I want to give a shout out to an episode that I did, and of course, as I'm Stephanie Robson. Her name was fleeting me for a second, where we kind of go through all the things that you need to consider for like restaurant rollout. Like if you're designing a restaurant, she used to teach restaurant design and layout at Cornell University. We had her on the show, and she just did this. I think it was a 3-part series. So search for those episodes, Stephanie Robson, and she spells her name with an I at the end. So STEPHARENI. Just it's a weird spelling, so try different things if you're looking for this as you're listening. But so you went and you took this class. What was that like?
It was fun. I mean, I was in there with a bunch of people who worked in the industry, which was also good because I got to talk to them about what's
somebody looking to come in. Is that somebody? I just want to make sure they know it's okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Maybe not. All right.
No.
Sorry to disrupt.
So it was fun. It was good being around people that were largely in the restaurant industry, young people who I got to talk to them. Where do you work? What's it like? What do you like about the space? What don't you like about the space? What works well? There were bartenders, servers, managers there. So it was that as much as what we learned from the book.
Yeah,
that was helpful.
I gotta just pull out your humility to be willing to like say like I don't know anything. A lot of people have ego, and they're like, oh, I can do it. I don't need help. Where do you say your ego lies? Do you have an ego?
Oh, we all have egos,
right? But you're willing to like suppress it. I think, which is there's a lesson there.
Right, and again, you got to admit when you don't know something.
Right.
Rather than say, oh, I think I can make this work, talk to somebody who's done it. Talk to somebody who can help you. I ask questions of people all the time. When somebody comes in, and we had a guy come in who was a regular guest who was an oyster farmer, and Chef and I had talked about doing oyster nights out on the patio. And when you get somebody like that who comes in and says, well, what would it take? How do you think this could work? And because we could have just gone and stumbled through it ourselves and tried to make it work and try to set up a relationship with somebody. But here this guy was able to advise us. He took care of the problems that we foresaw, like hiring somebody to shuck oysters. It didn't. We didn't need somebody to shuck oysters because the way we were able to work it is they provided the shucker and our guests were thrilled because these were oysters from a local farm, harvested that day by the guy who was out there shucking.
Yeah. I just want to pause real quick to acknowledge we have deliveries coming in. This is what I love about this podcast. I want to make sure he knows he's all set. I mean, we're a restaurant
that's our wine delivery. So.
Okay. So we're all. Is he done? I just want to.
Yeah,
okay,
it is.
cool.
It's a small order. Today.
People get worried that they're like ruining the show. I'm like, no, this is a restaurant business podcast, brother. You're all set.
Yeah.
So we covered a lot, man. We're already 45 minutes into this conversation, and we covered a lot. We haven't even opened the restaurant yet in the story.
I know.
Any other things that I don't want to miss that good opportunity in the pre-opening phase, and you're really giving great advice. So anything else before we get into what it was like to open? The things I hadn't anticipated. For example, I kind of knew where we were going with the Liquor Commission, but that's one of these things that's a little unnerving and unsettling if you're doing a restaurant in New Hampshire, is you don't get your liquor license until the entire space is built out. You've got furniture here. You've got a menu set. So that's a huge risk. I mean, is it likely to where you wouldn't get a license? Probably not. But think of how much you've invested in, and now the thing that you need to really run your business doesn't happen until the very end. Oh my gosh!
And so can be scary.
Why is that even a thing? You know what I'm saying? This is I understand regulation. I understand it's necessary. I'm very moderate politically. I see both sides. But to me, it's so stifling for small business owners. We're getting to the point where it's getting harder and harder to be a small business owner because of the amount of regulation and hoops you have to jump through.
Yeah. I think in the case of New Hampshire, it's some of the vagaries of the New Hampshire law, which is if you want a liquor license, you need to have a certain amount of food sales. So, for example, if you were doing wine and beer, there's no minimum amount, but you have to have the ability to prepare and serve hot and cold foods. Right. So when you get that license, which is what we started with, they need to make sure you've got that kitchen. Make sure you've got a menu. Make sure you've got tables and chairs and silverware and plates so that they know that you can satisfy the law. So I get that in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And if you're going for a full liquor license, then 50% of your revenues need to come from food sales up until you hit $75,000, and then you don't have to meet that 50% requirement anymore.
Okay.
So it may be a vagary of New Hampshire, but again, I don't know what other states do, but they want to make sure that you've got that infrastructure in place to satisfy the law.
Right, and the laws are out there too, so you should do the research to make sure you're not doing anything stupid before you invest the money.
Right.
I get that.
Well, and the other thing too is to talk to, in the case of New Hampshire, talk to the Liquor Commission. When should I schedule my inspection so there's no delay in me getting a license? And it happens fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But you just need to build that into your schedule.
So you open in 2018, end of 2018,
July of 2018.
You spent about $400,000 between purchasing the space and building it out.
Yep.
That's really impressive, honestly. I feel like you could have spent a lot more money, but it was a small space.
Small space, and I was in here all the time managing the contractors.
So
I would stop by, even though I was working my day job, I would stop here every morning and say, okay, what's going on today? What's going on this week? What decisions do I need to make so that we stay on schedule? And that is vital. You got to be involved. Don't just turn it over to a contractor and check in once a week or once a month on how things going. It's really an everyday monitoring situation. things go wrong.
Right.
Things wind up in the wrong place, or decisions need to be made, and nothing happens until that decision's made.
Right. So what was it like when you first opened? What were the challenges associated with that?
Well, I mean, things are simple as when we first opened, the place was so noisy because we had all hard surfaces, and it's a small space, so we wound up putting sound absorption in. We needed more air conditioning because when we loaded the place up with people, the air conditioning contractor hadn't really figured the load out correctly, so we wound up having to put some extra air conditioning in. Staffing, we were okay on staffing, but we had some people who joined us as servers and lasted 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
They said, fine dining's not for me. And now, again, we were not the fine dining restaurant we are today. We had a much smaller menu, but they just said, this is not my vibe. This is not going to work for me.
Yeah. So the challenges with the immediate turn out of the gates, I think that one of the lessons I've learned, they say overhire because you know you're going to lose a good chunk of your staff. Like people just aren't going to make it. Maybe you have a vision for how it's going to be, and that vision might change. You might become something they didn't want to be a part of.
Right.
Things change in that early phase. What were you busy out of the gates? Sounds like you had a surge in the beginning.
We did have a surge in the beginning, and we were building. Our business was building right up until COVID hit. And then COVID hit, of course. Then like everybody, we were reacting to what we were told we could do. We just shut down, and we could do outdoor dining. Then we could do with a 6-foot spacing. Then we could do 25% inside, but that didn't make sense.
It takes a year or 2 years to get that clientele.
Yeah, year and a half.
What was what was your first year revenue from July 2018 to 19?
It was probably around 200,000.
200,000.
Yep.
Were you trending up for the first 6 months before having to close?
Yeah, we were.
If you projected the same numbers, where would you think you'd be?
Maybe 300,000.
Okay.
We had some physical limitations. Our kitchen was small. It was a 2-person kitchen. And we had no outdoor dining, so it was our menu didn't support it. Our menu was,
what was your menu?
1 or
then?
2 entrees, and then a half a dozen small plates.
Okay.
So that our tickets were maybe $45 a head.
Okay.
Average ticket.
Knowing what you know now, the changes you've made, what weren't you doing as good as you could have been doing then? Again, you were building, so it's hard to say.
Yeah. Right? What weren't we doing? I think we were internally. Now, I had a manager who had managed a wine bar, and there was this constant tension of, what are we? Are we a wine bar? Are we a restaurant? And ultimately, I needed to come down and say, we're a restaurant. We say wine bar, restaurant, but really, where we're going to make money is as a restaurant.
Why did you decide that? Why is that the case? Even though the majority of your profit comes from wine?
Because we just attracted more people.
Okay.
There's just not the foot traffic in this town. We're not in a big city, and my manager had come from San Francisco, so she was used to a big city environment where people stopped into a wine bar regularly, and you've got 1 million people in San Francisco, whatever the population is.
Right.
And so you don't need a lot of people to make that successful. Here in Exeter, we'd have to tap a lot of people to make just a wine bar successful. So we would constantly have that discussion of, what are we? And like I said, ultimately I had to say, we're a restaurant, let's focus on that direction. My first chef left me in 2021.
Okay.
I can jump ahead to that, which I thought was the end of the line for me. It turns out it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay. Let's leave that as a teaser, because one thing that came to my mind is we never really got into your passion, which is wine.
Sure.
So has that been like a lifelong thing for you?
It has been. I started drinking probably in college, but got more serious about it once I graduated college. And my wife and I would travel a fair amount. I would always try to include some wine-related activity in that, whether it was a winery visit or going to an interesting wine bar. And as we got older and had more disposable income, we traveled more frequently, more trips to Europe, and loved wine, loved learning about wine. Again, being an engineer, I kind of feel like a lifelong learner, and in not only wine, but kind of anything.
Yeah. So when did you so this passion for wine has kind of always been there, but was there a point where it really kind of like started to take over?
Yeah, that's it. You mentioned the date 2014. That was when I first thought about opening a wine bar. I told my wife, gee, I'd love to open a wine bar in town. And I didn't know.
Wouldn't
anything.
it be fun to retire and open a restaurant? Famous last word.
Well, this was well, this is before I was thinking of retiring. I was going to do this on a part-time basis.
Wow.
But fortunately, the space didn't work out, and I wasn't ready for it because I was still working full-time, developing some big projects with my company that would ultimately take a huge amount of time. And I didn't think Exeter was ready for it.
Do you live in Exeter?
I do. My wife and I have been here almost 41 years.
I know your wife teaches harp lessons at the library, right?
Well, she plays the harp. She teaches at Phillips Exeter Academy, but she also performs, and she's director of a New England Irish harp orchestra.
Oh, cool.
So she's she's an active performer.
Yeah, I saw her on the New Hampshire Chronicle.
Yeah, good. So that didn't. I didn't think Exeter was ready for it. Really, what changed my mind was in probably 2016, maybe 2017. Lee Frank opened Otis.
Right.
Lee's a super talented chef. And I ate there quite a bit and saw how busy he was and said, maybe there's a market in Exeter for fine wine. Because I know Lee kills it on the food. I think he doesn't focus as much on the wine. He had a great cocktail program, had a great bartender. Still does a good cocktail program. He didn't focus on wine. I thought there was an opening for me to focus on wine and wine-related food.
Got it. And at what point did you get your SOM certifications?
That was 2018, right after I opened this.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, no, I got my first SOM before I opened this in February 2018. Then I've gotten a few other certifications, WSET and Certified Specialist of Wine and Italian wine specialist.
Awesome. So was it hard for you to give up this identity as a wine bar? Because that was really your leading edge, your driving force for you personally, your vision.
It was, again, when I'm going to kind of fast forward. When I lost my chef, I really did that soul searching of what are we going to do now? We were on the path to being a restaurant. I was okay with that because for me it's all about wine as a beverage, and what you learn when you go to Europe is people don't just sit necessarily and drink wine. It's something to go with food. It's something that goes with the local food. So food and wine was important, and it was something that I was very comfortable with. If I had a good menu, loved coming up with pairings for that food, or just providing wine for somebody that did want to sit down and have a glass to relax. But it wasn't a big deal for me. It was a big deal for my manager, who had trouble with that concept.
Right. And this is where the podcast can get awkward sometimes because I like to talk about relationships. We don't need to mention the name of the chef or anything like that. But was there a good relationship there? Why did they choose to leave?
They got an offer. So this is early 2020 or maybe March or May of 2021. As you recall, that people were poaching other chefs and other kitchen staff.
It was a tough time. People were exiting the industry, so it was a jockey to get whoever you could. Yep.
So the chef was offered a lot of money at another area restaurant, much more than I was paying, and he learned quickly why that was, because he went from working 35 hours a week to 70, and that extra incremental money just. It was, I think, on an hourly basis, you're probably making less than he was with me on salary. The relationship was difficult. To speak honestly, he put so many constraints on me. It was hard to make money. And some of the constraints.
No options, in other words?
No options. And because of the physical constraints of the kitchen, I think his own constraints of how much stress he could handle, it wound up making it difficult to...
And he designed the kitchen.
He had input in the kitchen. I mean, a restaurant designer worked with him, but the kitchen was set up for him.
And that was the constraint you're talking about, the physical...
Well, there was that. It was a small space, very small space. It was a two-person kitchen.
It is a small space. There's 24 seats in here.
Yeah, but I mean, even the kitchen was very small.
Got it.
And we were limited because he would say... We can't do more than 6 people in a half hour, or And so if we had a party of 8 that wanted to come in, couldn't take them. He didn't like having anybody sitting near the kitchen looking at him. So I couldn't. Those were the last tables I had to fill, and usually those are the prime tables. People want to see.
Right. That kind of that has
see
changed.
the kitchen.
That has since changed.
Oh yeah.
Where that is now your number one, like
oh yeah.
The chef's table is like your core thing.
Absolutely.
So,
it's definitely attracts a lot of people.
So it wasn't a match made in heaven, but there's no.
It was not,
disrespect
he's a talented chef. Just needs to deal with some of the issues that I think are standing in the way of his success. He's a super talented guy.
Got it. So he takes this opportunity, more money, security, understandable, right? And then you're like, well, crap. Where were you at the end of 2021? And I mean, I don't want to get too much into the pandemic because we all know how that, like but did you come out of that, like, again, options? Were you more galvanized coming out of that in some way?
Well, so he left in, let's say, May, and I sat for several weeks analyzing what are my options. Do I shut down? Do I sell the place? Do I open it as just back to the original concept of a wine bar, because who knows how long COVID's going to go on and what staffing's going to be like? Do I do a full-service restaurant and take over space to do that? Well, I didn't have a chef. At that point, I had a cook who really wasn't much of a cook. And then the second punch that landed was my managers left, took another job. So now I got no manager. So it was close to shutting down. It was.
Paint the picture of, like, I mean, you're doing a great job painting the picture, but like, where were you emotionally?
Oh, I felt like I was kicked in the gut.
Yeah.
And all this money I'd invested, was I going to recoup it again?
How much money were you losing?
Well, I don't know that we were losing a lot because we had scaled back on staffing. Okay. So I basically had a manager who was serving as a server. I had one server, and I had a cook.
Yeah.
And that was it. And even though we had the patio open, we were able to handle it with that.
Yeah.
And I would work. I mean, I was working basically behind the bar pouring wine. But it was really those looking at all these options. I still have the paperwork from that just to remind me of those days. I really couldn't have predicted what actually did happen.
So you said "and again," and I think I cut you short. Do you remember what your train of thought was?
Well, no. I mean, I was looking at where we could go. Could we open? I looked at turn it into a pizza joint, where I put in a self-contained pizza oven and hood and make pizzas and make it a wine and pizza bar.
Good margins in pizza.
So there's good margins in pizza. And,
yeah.
But I didn't have a clear answer, and fortunately I didn't have to make that decision because what happened quickly, so May then the town says we're authorizing outdoor dining. The governor has signed into law that outdoor dining is acceptable.
May 2021?
2021. The town sends out an email saying, if there's town land you'd like to use, here's the application process. We went around on a couple of locations, ultimately settled on sitting by the river, and I built a patio out there.
What a great deal, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful view.
And so
how many seats are out there? 38?
Now there's 34.
34?
Yeah, we started off with 14.
Oh, wow.
So that at least gave us 2/3 capacity in good weather. So this was May. We were able to recover and survive for the summer. Again, with small plates that weren't exactly the most exciting, but again, people wanted to support us, so they stuck with us.
I love that.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master on restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
Paul comes into the picture.
Yes.
You're about to wait. Before we get into that, when you said you were about to close, was it more emotional? Like, did you just have enough? Was it not? Do you think you wouldn't be able to make it? Like, what was the thing that was making you think closing's the right answer?
Well, I didn't know, but it was one of the answers. That's the thing. When you got to look at everything as uncomfortable as they are, and say what makes sense given where I'm at and where I think things are going.
Was it what you thought it was going to be? You had this dream of one day opening your wine bar. This is like your retirement plan, right? Were you feeling like disillusioned, like, well, what was I thinking?
No. What I didn't realize is how dependent you are on key staff members. And you think that chefs are fungible and that you can find a chef anywhere you want.
Once upon a time, not today.
Not today.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize that. I started to realize that when I first was looking to hire, because I didn't have this one chef lined up, and I was just going to American Culinary Institute or American Culinary Foundation events just to try and recruit a chef and see who's out there and understand what's the best way to find a chef. And I was having no luck until I was able to attract this friend of the family who was my first chef. But
let's go to Paul. Unless you want to finish that train of thought.
No, I mean, I do in that, again, because I had another career, a successful career, this wasn't going to be the end of the world for me. If I had to sell it, even if I lost some money on it, I didn't have debt I had to pay off. It wasn't going to cripple me financially.
Right.
And I wouldn't have to go bankrupt, for example, to here. So I didn't have that pressure that a lot of other people have, and I'm fortunate, and I recognize how fortunate I am.
I got you. So Paul comes into the picture. You're about to either A, make this place a pizza joint, or B, close it, and Paul emails you, calls you, walks in. What happens?
He DM'd me on Facebook and said, I'm Paul Callahan, I'm a chef, can we talk? So I said, you bet, because I got no options at this point for cooking. I get it. I had a cook who really couldn't cook.
Yeah.
So Paul and I get together. We arranged a time. We spent 2 hours out on the patio talking about a number of things. Some of which was the restaurant. Some was our views on hospitality. What are our guests like? What's the philosophy?
What was the philosophy? Like, what were the things that you were connecting over?
We were connecting. Well, first of all, one of the things is what's really informed my views on this business is there's a TEDx talk that Bobby Stuckey did.
Past guest on the show. He was awesome.
Is that right? Yeah. He's fantastic. His Be a Hospitalian TEDx talk, I think, is really, really transformative for people.
How did it transform you?
Well, because you think of this, you kind of conflate these terms, service and hospitality. You think they're the same thing. You really do. There's the Service and Hospitality Awards. And in that TEDx talk, he really draws that bright line between service and hospitality. Service is what, to paraphrase, and I've said this a million times, and he's, I credit him with this. Service is what you do to or for somebody. You can have impeccable service. People will come once for the special occasion and never come back again. Hospitality is the way you make people feel.
Yeah.
And that's really what we strive for. And that's what Paul, he latched onto that to me. He said, that's my mantra. I don't care if our profit is down a little bit, but we're going to give people ice cream on their birthdays and make them feel special. And we're going to have a card for them when it's their birthday or their anniversary, and make people feel special, make people feel like this is their place. And we talked about it, and we talked through that and said, yep, we see we're on the same wavelength. And when you got that common ground, you can figure things out. So he then said, well, we need more kitchen space. If we're going to, we need to expand the menu. We need to move our ticket prices, our ticket per ticket costs or per ticket revenue up. Let's figure out how we do the kitchen. I said, well, I got an option for us, Paul. I own this other space. We can expand into the basement. I got to work some things out.
So where was the kitchen before Paul came in? How much more did you add on?
We added so it was just that narrow space, which is about 150 square feet.
To the left, if you're looking over my shoulder.
Yep. So, and it included a small cooler. We had a 4-foot under counter cooler, small half-sheet oven, and 3 or 4 induction cookers. That was it.
And you blew up this side to the right.
Yeah, we took over some of the basement. Again, that is easier than it sounds because fortunately I own the space, so the negotiation with myself was easy.
Right.
But
Sold.
I had to negotiate with the tenant, and I did that, and we reached agreement on it, and then we started construction. And what had been in that space, because one of the previous tenants was a jewelry store. There was a vault that used to store the jewels in, and it was like the crown jewel. So it was shown on the drawing, 6-inch cinder block. So we figured that. 3 days of demolition. Turns out what wasn't shown on the drawing was the 6 inches of steel reinforced concrete behind it.
Ugh.
So the 3 days turned into 3 weeks.
Oh my Lord.
Doing it on times when the tenant wasn't there because we had to jackhammer this all out. So we could start 7:30 in the morning, had to finish by 10:30 or 11 when they opened up. And so it took us 3 weeks to get that out. We did the construction, opened it up, and Paul we added a bunch of new equipment. We had some COVID money. I mean, that's where I didn't go spend that COVID money on silly things.
Good thing you opened when you did, because if you waited a year to open, you wouldn't have had that COVID money.
Exactly. And so we put in more cooking equipment. We went to a full sheet oven. We added a whole cold side, much more refrigeration, and we were able to make the kitchen what it is today, which is really super compact but super functional. So we've got cold side, hot side now, and it works well. So we've got right now a 4-person kitchen. And
went from 2 to 4.
Went from 2 to 4, and then we've got a full-time dishwasher, so it's actually 5 in the kitchen.
Got it. So one of the things you did, and I got to speak with Paul before this, so I kind of know the story a little bit already. I know that he took you from 250,000 to almost have you guys eclipsed a million? Is that going to happen this year?
Yeah, it's going to happen this year.
So 4x.
Yep.
4x your top line revenue in 3 years. Is that right? 2021 to 2024.
Yep, 3 years.
We talked about the fact that he helped you get a higher per ticket value, or you sell
revenue.
Higher ticket items. So that helped increase your margin. And what else did he do?
Well, we continued to push the wine club. Now that's something we didn't talk about, but we started that in late 2019. And this wine club model is people pay $100 a year to join the wine club. And what they get as membership in that wine club is they get invited to 10 tastings a year.
How many people are allowed to join?
Well, I was shooting for 25 because that was our capacity. It got to 25 in about 2 months. Then word of mouth started taking off, and we got up to 50. And so we had to start doing 2 sessions a night, or 2 tasting sessions a night. And then I wasn't paying attention, and we got up to 85 members.
Wow.
And so I had to cut it off. May of 2023, I stopped accepting new members. It's drifted down. We're at the point soon where I can open it back up, but it's been terrific for us because during COVID, we were able to maintain contact with our guests. So so we started 2019. We had people here live. I did the first couple of sessions. Then we were able to bring in some importers, and that worked well. COVID hits, and I start. What am I going to do with the wine club?
So real quick with the wine club, it's $100 for a year membership. Yep. You have up to 50, so that's $5,000 you're getting of additional revenue.
Right.
And then you have like a schedule where how do you communicate that schedule?
So we send a mailing out. We schedule events. We try to do it monthly. We schedule events, send an emailing out to our wine club members, and they can buy tickets.
Okay.
And
how much does a ticket cost?
Now it's $15, and for that they get to taste.
And how many
4 or
people are
5
allowed
wines.
to show up to each event?
We do 28 seats for each seating, so we can do 56.
Okay. So 15 times 28?
Yep.
All
Or
right.
15 times 56. So it's about $700 or $800 in ticket prices.
Okay.
That's not where we make the money. We make the money on retail sales.
Okay.
Because people buy. People come, they taste, they learn about the wines, they learn why the wines taste the way they do. They may like them, they may not like them, but we'll sell anywhere from, I think the lowest we've ever sold was 10 cases of wine. And that was Mexican wine, so that's a hard sell. To the most we've ever sold, we did a Bordeaux tasting, and we sold 22 cases in one night.
So how much, on average, are you earning per event?
Revenues are, with the ticket sales, we're probably on average about 6,000 on a Tuesday night, on a Monday night.
Two a night?
No, that's total. That's the whole night.
Oh, okay.
So that's 6,000 on a night, one server, and me.
Okay, that's awesome. And you do this once a week?
No, once a month.
Once a month. Okay.
Once a month.
So what would you say your total revenue is annually from that?
From retail sales, or
so
from
it'd be
just
like
the wine?
Let's just do 6,000 times 52.
Well, no, times 12. So it's about 75,000
Oh yeah, that's right.
of wine club
okay
revenue.
That's huge.
Now, retail in general is a lot more than that, because we will do a wine dinner.
You're selling every night.
We're selling every night,
Yeah.
but we'll do wine dinners. Like we did a wine dinner last week with a wine from a winery that the chef and I visited during the summer in Italy, and I think we sold $6,000 worth of wine at a dinner.
Okay, so what would you say you're averaging every night on retail?
Probably 300.
300. And then how many nights a week are you open?
5.
5. So 5 times 52. So I like doing the math here. 300 times 5 times 52 equals about 30,000. So you're doing another 105,000 a year. So right there is
I think last year we did
50% increase in revenue.
120,000 last year.
Okay. So you started getting into the details on how you set that wine club up. So what you do is you have an email that goes out, and then you are educating. You're bringing in vendors who are. What is your approach to these wine clubs?
Again, I said when we first started, it was me.
Right.
During COVID, what happened was, all of a sudden, all these personalities became available because nobody could travel.
Right.
The wineries didn't want people to travel. The distributors, the importers didn't want people to travel. So how do I take advantage of that? Well, I started talking to them. Let's do Zoom. Let's do a Zoom wine club meeting. So the first one we did, we had already scheduled, and it was the week after we had to shut down. And so I had the wines in place, so I had people buy the wine. We actually spread it over 3 weeks.
Okay.
So we had 6 wines, and I thought a lot to ask somebody to buy 6 bottles of wine for a tasting. So we did 2 a week for 3 weeks, 2 wines a week for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that worked okay, but I got feedback from some people. I said, we really don't want to buy a whole bottle of wine. So I kept the engineer me, okay, how do I solve this problem? So I found food-grade pouches that were heat sealable, and we would package up tasting kits, which were 1 glass of wine. We charged $20 for the tasting kit because it was enough for 2 people, and people came and picked them up, and then we had the personality on via Zoom, and we had some incredible personalities. We had Laurent Drouin from the Drouin family in Burgundy, one of the largest property owners in Burgundy. We had Luca Bernardi from the Bertani. Luca Bernardi, Andrea Bernardi from Bertani.
Are these wineries you visited in the past? Do you have a relationship?
No. It reached out, and with Giulia Cecchi from Tuscany on via Zoom, and we had.
Did you record these? Please tell me you recorded these.
I recorded some.
I feel like you could have your own little YouTube channel going.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun, and they would describe the winery and describe the wines, and then people would place their orders.
Yeah.
They place their orders online to buy the wine, and so as a result of that, we sold a fair amount of wine there, and we got the reputation of having interested and, more importantly, lucrative wine club for the distributors and the producers. So we started getting more and more personalities, and to this day we still get great personalities. We have winemakers coming in, and we have importers that are working with us. We've had importers and distributors bring in wines that aren't normally in the state of New Hampshire to help support the wine club and introduce them to the market.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You're creating these experiences, but you're also starting relationships with really great people who, if you can get access to those wines, it only increases the value of your restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that what happened?
It is, because,
Wow.
for example, we've got that relationship. So we did a wine dinner last week, as I mentioned. we brought in wines that were never in the state of New Hampshire before. Of the 5 wines we had paired with the courses, only 1 had ever been in the state before. The other 4 were brought in especially for us.
Okay.
And so people taste them and say, "Oh my God, these are great," which is what Paul and I said when we were at the winery and bought them.
Yeah. So, okay. So you start to ramp up your wine club. You increase the total ticket sales
Yep.
per item. You have a better, basically higher volume menu.
Right.
What else did you do?
We expanded the patio. So when we first started, the patio was 14 seats. We're at 34 seats today, so we did 2 expansions of the patio.
So over doubled your total volume in terms of you can do in a night.
Right.
Well, that helps.
Well, at least during the summer, at least during good weather.
That's right.
Not quite, maybe 1.5 times, because we try to manage that so that if we do have bad weather,
right,
we can move people inside.
Right.
So we take reservations early outside and a little later inside. So if weather turns bad, we can move people inside.
What about the total? Sorry, did you have
No. So that way we're protected if the weather's bad.
Got it.
If the weather's good, we'll take walk-ins inside
Got
until
it.
the kitchen says no mas.
And then what about?
Which doesn't happen very often. Paul just says, "Keep bringing them in. We keep bringing them in. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. We can keep up."
Yeah. So another thing that you talked about was the you had this beautiful seat like looking over the kitchen, right?
Right.
And you started doing a chef's table. Was that something that you were doing before and it just didn't really kick off, or like how did that change? How did like the overall experience change?
I mean, you've met Paul, and you know
Yeah.
he's a very personable guy,
Yeah.
and a passionate guy about his food, and loves to cook for people. And he bugged me for months. So he joined us in July of 2021. He bugged me for months to do a chef's table, and I was the one who kind of dragged my feet a little bit. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. How would we reserve it? What's the configuration? So finally, I got it built. We opened it in February 2022. We started with the chef's table, and it was good. I mean, we would have reservations there, and it's a screaming bargain, which maybe people think I'm crazy, but it's an 8-course tasting menu for $60.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't include wine pairings, and we offer wine pairings. It's not mandatory you take them, but with the option to take paired wines. So we make a little more on the margin on the wines. But for us, it has been an incredible selling point for the restaurant. Early on, we had one of the active posters on a Facebook group called Seacoast Eats, which is, I don't know how many followers they have now, probably 4,000 or 5,000. And it's we had somebody who ate there and just wrote this incredible review of his entire experience there, and that opened the floodgates. So by May of 2024, we were booked out through the end of 2024.
Wow.
Every seat, every night, 2 seats a night. And so it's a small experience. It's only 2 people, but it's an incredibly special experience. And you're sitting right at the elbow of the chef. And he just talks about each dish. We try to get all the kitchen staff involved so they've got pride in what they're doing. So our sous chef will present a dish, our tournant, even our youngest line cook gets to present their dishes to the guests and to exhibit the pride and communicate the pride they have in the dishes that they've prepared. And people love it. Our guests absolutely love it.
Looks like we have another delivery coming, and I don't think he's going to be able to get past that wine, so we might have to pause real quick.
No, that's for the restaurant next door.
Okay, just making sure.
We're good.
All right, cool. So $60, 2 turns a night.
Yep.
I heard Paul's argument as to why he keeps it at that rate. I'm sure you know the argument.
Yep.
So, for the sake of seeing if there's any consistency here, what is the argument?
Well, I think it's provided us invaluable advertising.
Yeah.
People have just, the reviews we get from people that sit at the chef's table is worth more than charging $100 or $150 for the experience, which we probably could, and
Right.
people would do it. But when we get the reviews that we get, it's only 2 seats out of 24.
Right.
We make money with it. It's he gets to play around with things that he wants to try out in the kitchen.
You get to establish a relationship with the chef, so they're like that makes it the experience hit harder. It's a better experience. It's a more intimate experience. Now you have a relationship with the restaurant. It's not transactional.
Right.
You're gonna want to go back.
Exactly, and we do see that. We have people. Sometimes it's first time they come is to the chef's table. They're back the next week, and they're back with friends.
Yeah.
And so, he and I don't argue about it. I say, well, maybe we should go to $75. He goes, yeah, if we want to, but how much is that going to be in the course of a year?
Well, it's the hospitality, and at the core of hospitality is making people feel good, giving them a deal, but it's also generosity.
Right.
You know, if you look up synonyms for hospitality, it's warmth, generosity,
right.
You know, the giving. You know, I think that has also gotten our industry into trouble because we have tended to give ourselves into a corner where we have nothing left to give because we're being so generous. To a certain point where it's getting harder and harder to make it in the restaurant industry. Right. So finding that balance between hospitality and fiscal responsibility, you know, to be fiscally responsible so you can provide, so you can give to your staff and provide hospitality to your staff.
Right.
It's a hard balance, right?
Right.
But it seems like you guys are overcoming that.
Yeah, I again, it's a small portion of our restaurant. If that was the only thing we had in the restaurant, we would have to probably charge more.
Right. So I got into the conversation with Paul during our recording about talk. You guys use Resi.
Yes.
You started with Reserve. And
yes.
I know this I came in this past Saturday and I had a great meal with my dining companion, and we got to talking a little bit. I tried to stop you a little. I was like, I don't want to know too much. And,
but I love to talk. So
yeah, I mean, I find that if I know too much, I make assumptions, and I'm less curious because I forget that my listeners don't know these things. But I did learn that you started with Reserve. Reserve was purchased by Resi.
Correct.
So you got into Resi at a low, they grandfathered your rate.
Correct.
And then I know recently Resi just purchased Talk.
Right.
So kind of take that, like, what was it like going from Reserve to Resi? Was the experience better or worse? Like, how did that go?
It was similar. I mean, every one of these systems has some quirks to it. And believe me, I spend probably a couple hours a week.
You're an engineer.
Well, a couple hours a week untangling software problems, and things happen that don't make any sense, and I'm on with tech support saying, "What happened here? Why does this happen?" And
was this specifically with the reservations?
Well, reservations, there were some quirky things that happened with that. It's also, I don't know how this is going to change with the acquisition of Talk. Talk is very user friendly. It's all done it's all done online. You don't have to do anything at the POS or at your tablet, which you have to do with Resi now, which is a little uncomfortable.
Like what?
Well, for example, you set up events and you set up the schedule in the back end of Resi, whereas if you want to set up the table configuration, for example, for your restaurant, you have to do that at the tablet. So the two of those, once you set that up, then you can use the back end to say, okay, I want this table configuration to be what we have for service. But so you've got to have the tablet and the computer open at the same time to make this work. So it's a little clumsy.
Wonky, yeah.
A little clumsy. We've learned to work around it, and the cost savings are so much more that we'll work around it.
So the savings you get with Resi versus maybe moving to Talk.
Correct.
All
yeah. Talk. I looked at Talk and I talked to Talk, and on the face of it, it seemed like it would be a good deal, but then when I really dug into it, the economics didn't make sense for us.
Get into that.
So we're at this grandfathered rate with Resi, which is under $200 a month, and Talk I think was $219 a month. On the face of it, given the ease of use, I thought, $30 a month, $40 a month.
How much time are you saving?
Exactly.
$20, yeah.
Exactly. So I looked at that, but then when I really got into it, one of their features, and I don't know if that'll stay with American Express having acquired them, is they would collect $25 per reservation, I believe. I don't know if it's per person or by reservation, as a prepayment. So that's fine. If people don't show up, you can keep that prepayment. Now, what the problem is that they collect a fee on every one of those reservations that are prepaid. So that $25 $8 a head, they're collecting 3% on. And I don't know if that's still their model, but this is a year and a half ago when we were talking. And so when you think about how much that is, if you're doing 200 covers, that's a lot of money.
75 cents a transaction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, 75 cents. So you figure that's another $150 a week.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, that very attractive rate.
That $20 increase is now $170.
Well, more than that. That's a week. So
Right.
so it's $600
Right.
more. Now, the counter argument from TOC, and I hate to speak for them because they should probably speak for themselves on it, is that you have fewer no-shows. That's not been a big problem for us. Maybe it is in some places. It's just not a big problem for us.
Yeah. I think it's a bigger issue in bigger cities because there tends to be people that are more proactive with booking.
Yeah.
Because you have to in the city to get to go to those big. People have stupid money in the cities,
Right.
so they're willing to burn cash to hold a seat, but then they might not feel like going out that night.
Now through Resi, we have the capability to put people on notice that if you cancel within 24 hours, we can charge $25 a person.
Okay, so you can circumnavigate the same effect through Resi.
Yeah, you get there. It's just that it doesn't cost you the 3%.
Well, I mean, it's worth pointing out that as we're recording this, I think we're a couple weeks ago, Resi purchased TOC.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how this rolls out.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like I said, so if they adopt the functionality, I will be doing cartwheels.
Yeah.
If they adopt the pricing structure, I won't be so happy.
Well, the reason why I brought TOC up the first time was because I think that with the Chef's Table, it's a prime example. I think one of the things that separated TOC from other platforms at the time is that they recognized that we're in the experience economy and that an experience is worth more during peak hours because there's a higher demand for that experience on a Friday night at 7:30 than there is at Tuesday night at 5.
Right.
So if you want to come eat at this amazing restaurant and have an amazing chef experience, then the people that might not be able to afford the $150 can come on a Tuesday night when it's $60. You know, because there's that supply and
demand pricing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think restaurateurs think like that, or traditionally we haven't. We were kind of adopted the old 1905 business model and we haven't changed it. But now with this technology, we're able to be more adaptable and we have dynamic pricing based off of supply and demand. I think that there's no shame in, you know, I don't think there's shame in being profitable, but you're also, you can then shift it to make it affordable for people that might not be able to afford. So you're also like making it more democratic, you know, like leveling the playing field where like, I don't know. This is just one perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I haven't thought much about demand pricing in the restaurant industry. I know McDonald's tried it and I don't know if they walked away from it or not, but because there was so much blowback on it, but I don't know. Maybe it makes sense from a business perspective. You know, in the energy world, the demand pricing happens all the time.
I would love to get Resi on an interview with you and me, or maybe a call, and like this. I want to do more. Like I want this podcast to be investigative, where we have conversations like this, and we say, "Hey, Resi, what do you have to say? Like let's hear your side of it." And to like have open dialogue, practical, real world scenario conversations with the tools and companies that, you know, are out there that we're using.
Right.
So I think this could be really interesting. If you're listening, Resi.
And Toast.
And Toast. So that's the other platform you're using.
We do. Yeah, we use Toast for our point of sales. We don't use some of the other things they offer. We don't use payroll and some of the other things, but we do use Toast for our POS. And it's very good. It's not as flexible as we need for some things, but it's really very good.
And are you using their online ordering features? And do you
do
takeout and stuff like that?
Well, not for takeout so much, but for wine.
Okay.
And we certainly relied on that during COVID. That was a big part of our business was online wine orders. And we still get online wine orders now, not as much.
Okay. Do you want to break that down, like the experience you've had with Toast, any weird quirks, or like just like you did with Resi, things you want to unpackage?
Again, for us, it sounds minor, but in our situation, because we sell wine 3 different ways, we sell by the glass, we sell by the bottle on premise, and we sell at retail, there's no common inventory system, for example. So if I've got 6 bottles of a certain wine and I sell 3 on premise, I still think there's 6, or the online ordering still thinks there's 6 in stock. If somebody orders 6, I got to tell them I don't have them, or I've got to refund their money or find a substitute.
So there's
product.
no way to. You have to create a new line item for whether it's by the glass, by the bottle, or retail.
Right, and the inventory on the bottle inventory, or even if I'm selling them by the glass, I have to manually go in and adjust the inventory for online.
There's no way to adjust the stock.
Correct.
Basically,
well, there is, but it's all manual.
Manual, got it.
There's no common inventory that says if I sell 4 glasses of wine, that's a bottle gone.
Right.
Or a bottle open. Or if I sell 1 glass of wine, that's a bottle open.
Other than that, how Toast has been pretty good.
It's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. They're very responsive. Their tech support's good. I like their handheld. The Toast Go seems to work very well because we use that out on the patio.
Yeah.
Yeah, the payment system works well for them. We don't have a lot of quirky things with them, it seems like.
Got it. Any other technology that you're leveraging?
Well, let's see. We've got Resi. We've got Toast.
Actually, before you get away from Toast, one more question with Toast. Are you using Toast's website? Do you have, are you hosting your website through Toast for online ordering?
No.
Or do you ever?
No, we do that through Wix.
Wix? Okay. And you have the integration?
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
Anything to talk about there?
No, I mean, Wix is very easy
Yeah.
to use. We actually run our wine club through there, so we use their sales side. So we collect. Well, people renew their membership there. They can start a membership when we open it back up. They can enroll in their membership there. Wix pushes everything to Stripe to collect the money, and we get the money from Stripe.
Got it. Along that train of thought, anything else that is new and exciting in terms of technology? I mean, I love having these conversations with engineers because you guys really go deep, and this is the kind of stuff I love to get from you. But
well, we use Constant Contact for our email system. Of course, we're on all the social media. I don't touch that anymore because I can't seem to ever get it right.
Yeah,
so
I feel
I've got somebody who does that.
I was born in the wrong generation, man.
I certainly was. But
so keep going.
So the Zoom we use for our some of our events. I think those are the major. We use Sonos, and so we use everything. Everything we have is somehow connected to our network. So. The problem is when the network goes down, like it did Saturday night, we had no music for some reason.
Right. One more thing I want to talk to you about. We're going to start wrapping up here soon. Man, time goes by fast. Can you believe it's been almost 2 hours of conversation?
I told you I like to talk.
It's just like I used to have the show be 30 minutes, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is so blah. Then it went to an hour, and then I was like, I will stay for 3 hours if you let me, because it just goes by so fast, and you've been so great. But one thing I admire about you, and something that I think could be an answer to a lot of the issues with inequity in the restaurant industry is you're willing to work with your chefs to become partners and stuff like this. And
right.
I think, not to put you on the spot, but you're willing to explore that in other spaces that might be opening.
Correct.
So help me get into your mindset and you're making me think of Texas Roadhouse right now. And I think he was one of the first operators that operated at scale where if you want to open a Texas Roadhouse, you're going to be you're going to buy in at $25,000 investment to be a partner, and you're going to get, I think, 10% of profit. So profit sharing too. I don't know what your model is, but what is your mindset? What is your model in terms of partnerships?
Well, clearly you need to recognize who the key staff members are, and Paul clearly is a star. I mean, I know you talked to him, and I do want to just go back a little bit because it's part of my management style. I recognize that I don't know how to set a menu. I mean, I know what I like, but I don't necessarily know how to set a menu. I gave him total freedom when he joined on. I gave him total freedom. I told him, I'll give you the resources to have you succeed, but you are setting the menu. You're hiring and firing. Everything from the kitchen back, from the pass back is yours. You own that. You're going to have to, we're going to talk about cost of goods and making sure we make money, but you're responsible for that. And I gave him that total freedom, and I don't know if I'm the first place that's ever given him that freedom, but he just thrived with that and came up with incredibly creative items. And with the chef's table, he was able to just have fun. And so he started in July of 21. January 23, he's James Beard semifinalist for Best Chef Northeast.
Yeah.
And so that's a reflection on letting people do their thing. Let hire talented people, let them do their thing. So that's really the mantra.
Yeah.
And I tried to, and I worked with him. He has said to me, I don't want to burn my kitchen staff out. We're going to set up the schedule so we work 4 days a week. Everybody gets 3 days off. I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
I support that. You're in charge of scheduling. So he does that. And even I provide health insurance that I pay 50% of for anybody who works more than 15 hours a week, which is much lower than most people do. They usually do 30 hours a week. Because I don't want somebody not going to the doctor and getting sick and infecting the rest of the staff, or putting off some medical treatment that they need and then ultimately they leave, or having something happens to them and all of a sudden they don't have any money.
Right.
They have to sell their car or whatever. They just don't have the money. So for me, it's a small investment to make in the staff that creates huge benefits.
Yeah. And I think we're running up to it right now where there is this mass exodus in the industry, right? And can you really blame people?
No.
Can you? Like we should be able to at least offer security to our employees. And I think for many people, that they say that if you're making between $70,000 and $80,000, that is enough money that if you live a very modest lifestyle, you should be relatively happy because you can cover your most basic, like the most basic things you need to have security, like have insurance, to have safe housing. You don't this is a modest lifestyle, keep in mind. So you have to want to do the work and love the work. But for those people, we should be able to find a way to offer a secure. And if you want to be an owner or a partner in a business, then there's six-figure potential earning. You know,
well, you remind me that I never answered your question about the partnership. So there's a number of ways to make somebody a partner. Yeah. They invest and they get a portion of the profits.
That model. Yeah,
that's one model. I approached it differently because I think that this provides a better alignment of interests. Basically, I've given Paul, and he vested in 2 steps. He owns 15% of he has what are called unit appreciation rights, which means that he's earned 15% of the value of the business, which means one of two ways he can realize that value. He could buy it at a 15% discount, or if the business gets sold, he gets 15% of the proceeds from that. So that's a little different from profit sharing and direct ownership, but I think gets you to the same place and creates the same kind of incentive.
Why do you like it?
Because it makes everything less complicated. It makes, if there's a capital call. For example, we're doing this cocktail bar upstairs. Let's say the fit up is $400,000. That means Paul would have to come up with X percent of $400,000, 15% of $400,000. Probably doesn't have the money to do it. Not many people do.
Yet, but he's on his way.
Yeah, not many people do. He's going to own 15% of the value of that if it ever goes to sell, or if he wants to buy it.
Got it.
So I think there's pluses and minuses.
How do you set this up? Did you go to a lawyer to set this up?
Well, again, my previous life, I did a lot of deals and had a lot of complicated structures and deals and thought about things in different ways to create an alignment of interests.
Would you be willing to come talk about this if I were to host a panel or like a Zoom call for like you to coach other restaurant owners towards this approach? Because I think this is really interesting. I think it's the first time it's been mentioned on the show. So
we've looked at a lot of different structures, and it's even things like right of first refusals versus right of first offers. Again, in my previous life, you understand the different values of those things.
Right.
Unit appreciation rights is a way to get you there, align interests without creating complications and the downside of a capital call.
Right. There's one more thing I want to talk to you about before we wrap up. And you're a smart guy, and I've recently read this book, Power and Progress, and I'm reading another book on the coming wave, and it's all about this idea that technology is on the rise, and as technology, historically, as new technology is built, the people who are the owners of that technology tend to be the biggest beneficiary of the technology, in that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we talked about it earlier today. We're in the national market, where you have like these huge companies that are buying up other companies, and I think you're starting to see it in the restaurant industry. And I think American Express purchasing Resi, purchasing Talk. The only competitor right now is Open Table.
Right.
Who owns them? So we're moving in this direction where American Express owns how much of this huge element of the industry, reservations?
Yeah, it's going to be the Ticketmaster situation.
Right. And I think, it's interesting because like I've in full transparency, I've been reaching out to Resi. I was reaching out to Talk. Those are the two companies that if I were to get sponsorship, it's either going to be Resi or Talk. Those are the companies that I get the most recommendations for. Open Table, I think, has changed some things, and they're starting to get a little bit better of a reputation. And now it's like, well, here's the situation. Power and progress. If you have the technology, you have the power, you can control the narrative, you can pay people off, i.e. Eric Cacciatore's of the world, who host podcasts, who take money from sponsorship, and then you would I have been able to have this conversation with you today if my sponsor was Resi?
Maybe.
You know where I'm going with this?
I know.
So this is why my asshole's fucking puckering so hard right now, because I'm like, I want to have a journalistic, transparent podcast, and the people who make it possible are the people who pay my bills, and are they gonna be happy with me if I have these open, vulnerable conversations? So my thought is probably not, in my experiences, because people,
I would guess that you'd get some pressure from some corner.
So people are like, why are you so stressed out right now about sponsorship? I'm like, because I won't be able to have an honest conversation with people if this is what happens. Yeah. I think you're kind of starting to see with Toast too, where Toast is getting a very big, like what percentage of restaurants across the country are using Toast?
Yeah, I think that's more competitive. I don't know what the
It
percentage.
is definitely more competitive.
Yeah.
But they got a big market share. I don't know if it's 50%. It might be close to 50%. I mean, you got Square, which is like, I think, number 2 in terms of size.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at probably a half a dozen of them when I was looking to open the restaurant.
Right.
And it settled on Toast just because
it's a great product.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they're the number 1 recommended on the show.
Yeah.
But I think that it's really important as restaurant owners to have this conversation of, we need to be really mindful and conscious of who we're giving our money to, because we're creating monopolies. Why is that? So I've kind of pitched this to you. What's going through your mind?
It's really the side part of the business for me. I mean, if Resi goes from $200 a month to $300, is that going to be the end of us?
But is that it? Or what about the data that they control?
Well,
what about the they have power? They can control the market. Like, you won't have another option.
Right.
If all the consumers are on their platforms, it's not just monthly billing. It's like they control the data, the narrative, everything.
Yeah. You're right, and you're going to see it with AI too. And I was asked this by my daughter-in-law, who's very, very smart. Said, am I seeing any impact of AI on the business? And I said, really not. I mean, we've seen some AI-generated reviews that clearly were AI-generated. But then we had a guest come in when we did our wine dinner. We did a Somm Smackdown. 2 sommeliers picked wines to pair with each of the courses of a 5-course dinner. And he's developed an app using ChatGPT that does wine pairings. And he went through and he took a picture of the menu and the wine pairings and said, who's going to win? And ChatGPT got pretty damn close.
Yeah.
It picked 4 out of the 5 courses.
Well, that book, Power and Progress, do you want to add more to that?
No. So I maybe I'm just too naive. I just don't know how it's going to impact me, and I haven't thought much about it.
I think the exciting part about the world we live in today is that there are pros and cons to the internet, right? We talked about earlier how we're more disconnected than ever before, more transactional than ever before, but we're also more informed than ever before.
Yes.
And the the channels through which we get our information is fragmented. So there's more democratization of the information that we're getting. So you as the consumer can choose to listen to a podcast, and to get perspective. So I think what's good about this is we for the first time ever, we can get ahead of the technology, educating people and talking about, listen, like this next thing that we do has to be reverse engineered to serve humanity, not control humanity. So if we go into it with that mindset of like, does this make us better? So with an app like that I think could be an example of how your servers can use that information to provide a better service, right? So there's still the human connectivity, and that reduces your training. It also it's in a way educational, because that's information that you're learning as you go. So you can make that's an example of how it kind of helps humanity.
Right.
But it also replaces the need for a technician, a specialized skill in the restaurant industry.
It does, and it also, you don't know how reliable, how reliable the data is that it relies on.
Right.
Although in this case, it was pretty accurate in predicting what our guests voted on.
Well, here's the thing where it gets really dicey is if these AI companies get bigger and like there becomes the same scenario where you have a conglomerate AI company. They can feed the information they want to that AI to have it sway in a direction.
Right.
And that's where it gets like misinformation, disinformation, or just keeping information out. You're seeing Google do this with Republican information. Like if you Google search information, it favors left-leaning answers. That's scary. If that's true, I don't know how true that is.
I don't know either. But coming back to the American Express and Resi, I guess we do see it a little bit because we now get notes that pop up that say it's a global dining partner, which I believe is an American Express program. And I don't know whether they are steering people towards restaurants that use Resi, which is interesting if that's the case, and maybe it is.
I mean, I don't have the answers, but I do my best. I'm not the smartest person. I do my best to educate myself and to listen to books that talk about this stuff. And half the time I hear is wah, 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 wah. And every once in a while I'll pick up on something I understand, and I have to listen to it 3 or 4 times before I really wrap my mind around it. But I think in my position as the host of this podcast, I really have to start challenging the status quo and being smart about who I take money from, because I need to keep an honest platform out there.
Right.
So
I
that's
agree.
Kind of where I'm at.
But again, that's one thing. I don't even know what global dining partners mean, and I've asked people who it pops up with, and they say, well, it provides like better access to certain restaurants, better reservations. So does that mean a regular can't get in if somebody else is a global dining partner? I don't know.
Right.
But
these are questions we need to ask ourselves, though.
If you do the podcast with Resi, I'd love to ask that question.
If they still want to after what I just said. So a couple questions. We're going to officially wrap it up. What is one thing about you, your business, your values, your process, a system that's truly uncommon and makes you unstoppable?
I think the willingness to let good staff be good staff and play to their strengths. Whether it's a chef, whether it's a manager, whether it's a sommelier, they're talented people. Hire the right people. Let them do their thing. Make their job easy. Give them the resources they need to do their job.
I love it. The mission statement is to change the world through inspiring and empowering the restaurant industry. What is one way you've personally transformed? How are you better today versus the man you were when you got started in this industry?
Well, if you talk to my wife, I wouldn't. As an engineer, I was not the most social person. Now I'm interacting with 200 people a week.
Are you happier?
I am. There's another book about aging called Younger Next Year, and there's 3 legs of that stool. One is eating healthy and exercising, which I've always done. But the other 2 things are having a purpose in life, have a sense of purpose, and having social connections. And boy, this restaurant checks those 2 boxes for sure.
So you are getting younger.
I don't know about that.
I love it. So this is the last question before I have you call somebody out. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure. With the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy, what would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Let's see. Do good, be good, and don't take yourself too seriously.
3. This has been a lot of fun, Tony. I came across you through Paul. Paul said, you really got to talk to my business partner. We made it happen. I'm so happy he introduced us because you were fantastic. Thank you. Who do you respect and admire in the industry? Somebody that you're just like, wow, like that person's figured it out. Somebody who's treating their employees well, like you are, who's profitable, like you are. Who comes to mind? Who would you listen to?
Again, Bobby Stuckey. To me, I think he's got it. He's a smart guy. I mean, he became a master som in 2 years, which I think is the shortest anybody's ever become a master som.
Well, I had him on the show when I had like 100 downloads. So now that I have 1,100 plus episodes, maybe he'd still be willing to come back and follow up where we left off. I'd love to make that happen. Anybody else locally?
Well, again, I credit Lee Frank at Otis with giving me the confidence to open up the original restaurant, wine bar, and letting me understand that there's a market and what kind of market there is out there. Because to me, it was all about, will anybody come? And that's what stopped me the first time.
Yeah. Lee Frank, past guest. I'd love to follow up with him like I did with Paul to pick up where we left off. I think he's opened 2 more Lee Franks, or Frank Lee's.
Lee Frank's Burgers. Yep.
And he's opening a 3rd in Exeter, I want to say. So that'll be 4 units that he'll be.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so he's got a lot to talk about if he has the time, because I know it's not easy opening multiple restaurants at once. Look out, Lee. I'd love to get you on the show. And how can we follow up with you if we really enjoyed today's conversation, if we have questions? Maybe we want to come eat at your restaurant or maybe come work for you.
Sure. I'd love to have you in either capacity. We always are looking for talented people. We always love to have somebody come here.
Is there an email you want to drop on us?
Sure. It's A Callendrello. Okay. So ACALLENDRELLO at VinoEVivo.com.
Yeah. And I would love to have you speak on a Zoom, some capacity over Zoom to other restaurant owners about how you're doing things, because I think there's some value there. So if you're interested in joining that conversation, head over to restaurantunstoppable.com, join our community. And my vision for Restaurant Unstoppable is to be a listener-supported podcast so I can continue to have open and honest questions like this, or conversations like this, where we can talk about the realities without having to be censored because I need a paycheck. So support this podcast. Please join our community so we can do more conversations like this behind the closed doors in a community. And this is where I say, Tony, thank you so much, man. There is no question you are unstoppable.
Eric, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers.